I think the committee should expressed its interest by asking already in Land Bank. Nakapagtaka po talaga yung issue po of the money trail. I think we have established that the cash withdrawn from the Land Bank representing the confidential funds are taken out by the SDO in cash. Hindi pa napadeposit sa Land Bank. And it is in the personal cost of the SDO, which is in line with the joint circular. However, this is 125 million in cash, and in the case of DepEd, 37.5 million per quarter in cold hard cash. But what is not sure yet is where Ms. Acosta and Mr. Fajardo have brought the cash. I think we've established the line so far with the tellers. We're still going to have to establish that at least from the Land Bank up until the deposit, from the release of the check up to the encashment in Land Bank. We've seen that so far, but we still have yet to establish where the cash goes after that. And we have some further questions po in relation to this. Kasi po, ang nakikita po natin, based on the testimonies, even from the last hearing, in the question of confidential funds, it all points to two people po. In the case of DepEd, at least, it's pointing to the SDO and the head of agency, in which case that would be Mr. Fajardo and then Secretary Duterte. And of course, for the OVP, although interestingly, based on our last hearing, it actually was pointed to three people. If we recall the testimony of Attorney Sanchez, she actually mentioned that, based from her knowledge, the persons who would have knowledge of this confidential funds would be the SDO, si Ms. Acosta, the head of agency, which is VP Duterte, and the Chief of Staff, Ms. Zuleika Lopez. So in line with this, just to clarify, I'd like to ask a few questions po, no, kay Attorney Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman. Attorney Lopez, nabanggit po yung pangalan po ninyo last hearing. Just to refresh your memory, I'm sure at the time you were busy po with your personal concerns. We were asking si Attorney Sanchez po and si Ms. Villa del Rey about the processes within the OVP and the disbursement of the confidential funds. And it was mentioned, I believe, specifically by Attorney Sanchez, what we've established, at least with Ms. Villa del Rey, is that wala po silang kinalaman sa disbursement ng confidential funds. Ang alam lang po ng chief accountant is the requirements and that they would have to submit for the release of the check. And kasama rin po dito si Attorney Sanchez. However, Attorney Sanchez, I believe, made that statement that past that point, and what we've established with the Land Bank, the personalities involved with the confidential funds would be the SDO, the VP, and yourself. However, we take note po, Ms. Lopez, to the Honorable Chairman, most respectfully, na binigit po ninyo that you're only concerned with operations. And by operations, you're talking, I guess, about the social amelioration program ng Office of the Vice President. Is that correct, Ms. Lopez?
That is correct, Your Honor. That is my role as Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Office of the Vice President.
Ms. Lopez, I hope you Attorney Lopez, I hope you understand how we would be how we would find that quite confusing, because generally the idea of a chief of staff would be second to the head of the agency, and by virtue of that, everyone else in that department would be under the chief of staff. Generally, that's how it works. Our understanding is that in the OVP, how many USEC positions are there, may we ask?
There's only one Undersecretary position, Your Honor.
And the Undersecretary position is that of the Chief of Staff, correct?
That is correct.
So generally, including the SDO, although they have specific responsibilities under the circular regarding to the confidential funds, they are still under your supervision as the USEC.
The SDOs, Your Honor, do not report to me.
They don't report to you, although you are the most senior official after the Vice President in the...
Your Honor, if I may be allowed to, Sir Congressman Gutierrez, if I may be allowed to explain my answer. In the Office of the Vice President, although I am the Undersecretary and the Chief of Staff, I am purely handling, as I mentioned, operational concerns. There are areas, for example, that I am not privy to, one of which is the matter of confidential expenses. But as regards the institutionalization of the projects, implementation of the projects, communications that come through the office, internal, issuances of memo, issuances of special orders, etc., they go through me. And also, for external communications, Your Honor, for example, there is a request for referral to the, for example, the DSWD or the Department of Health. All these matters, Your Honor, are coursed to the Office of the Chief of Staff. And all communications emanate also from the Office of the Chief of Staff, external, especially to those national government agencies. On top of that, Your Honor, I handle the day-to-day operations of, there is a clustering in the Office of the Vice President. For example, as in the case of Director Lin, she handles the finance cluster, which is budget, accounting, GSD, no, is under you, the procurement. That is her AOR. On my end, Your Honor, I handle the frontline delivery of administrative support such as Disaster Operations Center, Legal Affairs Division, and also the protocol team. Those are matters that I have direct hand into and information I am privy to. So yun lang po yung aking areas of concern. And there are areas actually in the Office of the Vice President, katulad, for example, let me just cite, if you allow me, sir, the matter of the appointments or the scheduling of the courtesy calls, etc., on the Vice President. Although it may be true that high-ranking officials call me and say na, Yusek, attorney, confirm mo naman yung aming appointment with the Vice President. This is something that I have no say, direct say to, because this is all done by the appointments team. In the same manner, the protocol team of the Vice President, although all the members of the Diplomatic Corps call me as the head of the agency, as the highest official, and as the Chief of Staff, it does not guarantee them that there will be a scheduled courtesy call, because these are matters that are determined purely on that end. So it's I think it's a compartmentalized kind of setup, Your Honor, that there are only certain functions and tasks that I am privy to, in which case that is the one that I have mentioned earlier. But although I would wish to answer really respectfully as regards the matter of the confidential expenses, it is something that I have not really been privy to from the very beginning. So in the case of the earlier questions by Congressman Acop, rather, it is something that I cannot really answer because I am not privy to the disbursement, utilization, nor liquidation of the confidential funds. So, ganun po siya, Your Honor. That is how it is run in the Office of the Vice President.
Thank you for the clarification, Attorney Lopez. Well, I only mentioned
Thank
that
you.
because it was the words of Attorney Sanchez that mentioned that you would probably be privy to the disbursement. And I think it would be understandable. It would be an understandable statement on the part of Attorney Sanchez because the general understanding of a chief of staff and being the sole USEC of that agency,
Yes.
There would be an understanding that there would be certain that you would have overall supervision. Well, in relation to the SDOs and in line with the circular, we also understand that they have specific responsibilities only to them. But we can't help but be puzzled po, no? And I understand you're telling us now that it's compartmentalized, but still we would think that generally the head of the agency would course things through you. Although necessarily separate yung sa issue ng disbursement of the SDO, wouldn't other matters regarding the SDO, for example, administrative or human resources or logistics-wise, are they not coursed through you in relation to SDO? Because if I'm understanding it correctly, the job of the SDO would also entitle a lot of travel. As you've pointed out earlier, I mean, we've seen that maraming travel orders po ang ating SDO to the point na wala rin po siya today on the because of official travel po, no? So, in relation to that, there's a lot of intermingling pa rin. Although you might say compartmentalized, there are a lot of things that would go through you. I would understand the travel orders are signed by the Assistant Chief of Staff right now only because you were gone for the longest time. But generally, you would be signing off on the travel orders of the SDO. Would that be a fair statement?
Your Honor, I do not sign off on the travel orders of certain officials, or in this case, the SDO. May I just confirm kung sino lang yung pwede kong pirmahan na travel authority? Just the ODOS, ba? In my case, Your Honor, in our in the case of the Office of the Vice President, I can only sign off on the travels of Directors Lynn Sanchez and Director Baloro, who is the Director for Operations. All the other travel authorities, I do not sign off on them. It is HR. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, Attorney Lopez, you're
Yes.
telling us now that even sa pag-sign ng travel orders, may clustering pa po kayo. You are only authorized to issue travel orders for these two officials, and then everyone else has different parang boss. Ganun po ba yung sistema sa OVP? I hope you'd understand the confusion because we were presented before an organization and it all seemed to be like a pyramid, downstream lahat. Although there are clusters, everything's under you. But now we're seeing that there are limits to your responsibility. Are we understanding this correctly?
Your Honor, in the Office of the Vice President, we have a certain delegation of authority. There's only certain papers or documents that get into the Office of the Chief of Staff. And there are also others that go directly to the Office of Director Sanchez, as well as the Office of Director for Operations.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney Lopez, could you please guide us through also? Ano po yung ibang clusters? I think you mentioned financial, appointment, protocol. Operations, of course, is what you're in charge of. What are the other clusters so that we have an idea? So, in line with that, Attorney Lopez, so what you're saying now is confirming what Attorney Poa told us earlier, that if you take a deeper look into the OVP, napaka-compartmentalized. He used the same term actually. It's very compartmentalized sa OVP. So you are affirming that now po?
You said POA said?
The compartmentalized po yung OVP. Sometimes, what the left hand does, the right hand doesn't know. Parang what si Attorney Poa, while spokesperson, should be expected to know the ins and outs of the office because precisely as spokesperson, he will be relaying this information to the public. When we were asking him, he said compartmentalized po. He does not know about confidential funds. So you now, as the Chief of Staff, you are now confirming ng OVP po, despite the hierarchy that we see in the official organization chart, napaka-compartmentalized pala po yung OVP.
Yes, that is correct, Your Honor. I can only speak for my experience as the Chief of Staff. I cannot really speak for Attorney Poa because there are certain areas in the OVP that I have no information on, or I cannot really have a direct hand on how it all operates.
So, Mr. Chair, in the operation of the OVP, rather than the usual hierarchy where it's a pyramid, where you have the large base with information or data or operations, which passes information upwards to select supervisors, upwards again to director level, ASEC, USEC, and finally to the VP. You're telling us now that the OVP operates in a hub and spoke type of situation wherein the OVP is central and then direct na lang po siya to the different. For example, OVP direct kay spokesperson, direct kay Chief of Staff, direct kay Attorney Sanchez for operating different clusters. And each cluster doesn't know what the other is doing.
I can only answer, Your Honor, on my role as the Chief of Staff.
Yes. Sorry, and I'll just add to that point. No? And I understand you can only speak as the Chief of Staff because what you're telling us now is that you have been compartmentalized only as the Chief of Staff. So now you're telling me what I'm trying to present now, and if you would agree with that, is that the VP is very hands-on but treats you separately. So there's like I said, the hub and spoke. The VP is in the center, and she deals directly with Attorney Poa for other matters which you might not know, then directly with you for Chief of Staff of Operations for matters that only you know, directly to Attorney Sanchez for matters that only the finance would know, and you don't coordinate with each other.
There are cases, Your Honor, that is, in my experience, that is the case. For example, in the case of the spokesperson, it is not something that I am also privy to. The instructions for the OVP spokesperson. It happens, Your Honor, that way.
Thank you. I think this will be more, the compartmentalization of the OVP will be more relevant as we go on. But I'll just go back and focus on the SDOs. Thank you very much, Attorney Lopez.
Okay, thank
so
you.
Yun po, we had an idea, although Attorney Sanchez mentioned that 3 persons were involved with the SDO. It seems to be narrowed down po, no? It looks to be, like with the DepEd, it's 2 people. We have SDO, Gina Acosta, and the head of agency, which is the Vice President. So, para sa kalaman po ng lahat, yung joint circular, it dictates there that the SDO is personally tasked with the disbursement and liquidation of confidential funds, and the head of agency is personally tasked to oversee. So what Attorney Lopez has told us now, by excusing herself or by separating herself from the operations of the confidential fund, it now affirms what is in the joint circular. It is down to these two people. And in other words, yung SDO po yung inaatasan ng batas natin na humawak at siguraduhin mapunta ang confidential funds sa naayon na confidential expenses. So this is all in line with the circular. So since we have questions ideally for the SDO, but given that Ms. Acosta is not here, I'd like to ask these questions to Attorney Camora. Apologies, Attorney Camora. All roads lead to the COA, so I'll have to ask you in relation to the circular. So we are affirming po, no?
You are recognized.
We affirm po that with the joint circular, it's usually the SDO. It's only the SDO who is tasked with the disbursement of the confidential funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To put more meat into this, we'd like to present po yung certification, if the Secretariat would be so kind as to flash it. The certifications for the OVP and the DepEd. Sorry, this is in relation to the certification for the confidential funds. I think we have one sample dated January 10, 2022. And for the DepEd, we have one sample dated March 31, 2023. There. So, Attorney Camora, through the Chair, most respectfully, ito po yung certification na sinasabi po natin. This is what is submitted together with the liquidation report. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And this is precisely provided under the joint circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
This is the exact language po, no? Is this an annex to the joint circular, or is there a format that is provided?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's Annex B of the joint circular.
So as Annex B, even if the correct signatories are there, for example, it's signed by the SDO and signed by the head of agency and properly notarized, if it has been altered in any way that any of the provisions under the certification are different, di nyo po tatanggapin. It has to be worded precisely as Annex B provides. Tama po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And it would require all of these signatures,
Yes,
such as
Mr.
the head
Chair.
of agency. So we take note po that means that there are very specific things that are required to be certified as to be submitted with the liquidation report. And some of the things that stand out, it says here po, and I quote, incurred by the undersigned. So ibig sabihin po rito, it is the SDO that personally handles and disperses the money.
Yes, Mr.
That is
Chair.
basically the crux of the certification. And it just comes with other caveats.
Yes,
Like,
Mr.
for example, first, what is spent is in connection with the agency's intelligence and or confidential operations and activities. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And it also says that, two, it cannot be used for payment of salaries, wages, overtime, additional compensation, allowance, or other fringe benefits of officials and employees.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And third, that the expenditures are necessary and utilized for legal purposes.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So this means that the SDO should personally know the disbursements and the expenses incurred, and that he should have personal knowledge of all of this. That is basically what the certification is saying.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And this, hand in hand with the liquidation reports, would affirm again the responsibility of the SDO to disperse the confidential fund in accordance with the provisions of the circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Since the SEO handles the fund personally, it necessarily follows that he gives the money. Is that correct? And I believe you answered this with Congresswoman Garin.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You mentioned actually that there could be possibly multiple SDOs.
They could designate many SDOs.
From all of our agencies po and departments and GOCCs that would have CIF or IF, how many po would have only one SDO?
Actually, Mr. Chair, most have only one SDO. It is the agencies that have multiple SDOs that are fewer.
Okay, so mostly have one SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And in that case, that SDO is the one in charge but not paying, and it cannot be delegated further.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, for example, if we have an informer, which is basically what the CF is for, no? If you have an informer who needs to be paid, it is the SDO who personally pays this to them.
That is the presumption.
That is the
based
presumption.
on the certification, Mr. Chair.
And based on the requirements of the circular, it cannot be delegated. So the presumption should be reality. No?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And that is the understanding of the COA.
Yes,
That
Mr.
it is
Chair.
them who personally handles it. And it is them who personally receives the acknowledgement receipt.
Yes,
Is that
Mr. Chair.
So the SDO cannot give it to another employee, for example, out of the 125 million, a specific, for example, compartmentalized daw, clustering. So ikaw sa rewards of medicine, ito, 20 million. And then siya na po yung in charge sa, and then whatever ARs that delegated person would receive would pass it on to the SDO. That is not allowed under the circular.
Even if he or she does that, he or she is the one ultimately accountable for those funds based on his or her certification. So, it's under his responsibility pa rin po.
Yes. So basically, command responsibility siya pa rin. But if that
Yes.
were the case, that is not in line with the circular because it should be personally disbursed by the
Yes,
SDO.
Mr. Chair.
So we can't be too sure that the SDO, if it were the case that it were delegated, the SDO would not be able to certify it in such a manner. Because
Yes,
supposedly
Mr. Chair.
it's saying there that he's the one who actually disbursed the money.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And this is the same for payments of rewards. This is not just for the handling of funds in general. Even for
Yes,
payments of
Mr.
rewards and information, it goes the same way.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
The SDO gives payment directly to the recipient, and the recipient is supposed to give the AR or any DEPs that are in relation to that. Ms. Camora, Attorney Camora, so these acknowledgement receipts were submitted by the OVP and the DepEd to COA. This is the proof, this is the documentary evidence of payment that is required by the circular. And now we have that understanding that you've confirmed now that the SDO personally handles the same. So they handle the funds and they handle personally the DEPs.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, if there's any doubt to the confidential funds, if there is any doubt at all to the DEPs, any doubts to the ARs, which have been hammered down in the last hearing and now in this hearing, this all points down to the SDO. This is their personal responsibility under the joint circular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, for example, one of the things that we pointed out last time in relation to the dates, if there is any problem with the date of the AR, it should have passed to the SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Because unlike, for example, in our usual po natin, Attorney Camora, let's say, in a usual transaction, pumunta ka sa mall, bumili ka ng pagkain, magbibigay ng resibo, you wouldn't pay a second thought on that OR because usually you don't have to liquidate it anywhere. It's just a piece of paper. But as an SDO, in which you have a personal responsibility, nakataya pera mo pa rin kasi nakaband ka po to the treasury.
Yes, Mr.
So you would have to check and make sure that all of the ARs are accurate,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
including the date.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Since one of the responsibilities under the joint circular is to disburse the CF and IF in accordance with the provisions of the circular.
Yes. So in the circular, it requires an acknowledgement receipt, and an acknowledgement receipt would require the date. So the date having been filled in for the AR and received by the SDO has the responsibility to make sure that it is correct.
Yes, Mr. Chair, although the requirement is documentary evidence.
Documentary
of
evidence.
payment.
So I'm sorry, but yes, the AR as the DEP
Yes,
would be
Mr. Chair.
required to have gone under scrutiny of the SDO. So if we had 158 ARs which have a supposed typographical error, shouldn't the SDO have caught on since they personally gave the money and received the receipt? He would check the receipt. Kung tama yung pangalan, may signature, tama yung purpose, and the date. So the 158 times na mali yung date, supposedly 158 times na dumaan po ito sa SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So with that, we'd like to ask the COA. I know we've asked this before already, but we're looking into the responsibility of the COA. You've already mentioned many times that the ICFA would only be concerned with the submission of the DEPs and that you wouldn't look no further because generally parang ministerial na lang to a point. But shouldn't it have raised some red flags po? Especially now in hindsight, yung 158 with typographical errors ng dates.
Because of our hearings here, we're kind of looking into this, that we should be a little stricter on our audit from now on. So
We understand po, no, you mentioned before that one of the limitations of your office is manpower. And I think
Yes,
one
Mr.
thing that the
Chair.
committee will be working on in aid of legislation is to strengthen po the COA, that you would have the proper manpower support to make sure that this does not happen again. I think
Yes.
that's one thing personally this representation would like to push forward for the consideration of the committee. But with that said, so I hope now the ICFA would take into special consideration not only the impossibility of typographical errors, the frequency of it occurring, the time span in which it happens. And of course now, as mentioned by Congressman Adjong, we've seen earlier that there are problems even to the multiple names with different signatures. This should have raised a red flag. And of course, the bogus names that were raised by Congressman Acop, such as Mary Grace Piatos. So these are things that I hope that the ICFA would be more stringent with. But there's one more matter, aside from that, which we have brought up from the previous hearing, that I hope that you could consider. Upon studying po yung DEPs natin, and we already know that there's a question about the time span in which that it was dispersed. Alam natin, questionable yung 11 days, na 5 days pa nga po ay holiday, disperse po ito lahat. But one more thing we have to consider, now that you have affirmed to us, now that we understand it better, na yung SDO is personally in charge of dispersing the funds, we collated po yung ating mga DEPs. And we've seen po, for example, this is, I think, the DepEd. So this would be by Mr. Fajardo. For the, I believe this is the first quarter of 2023, submitted on the 31st of March, there were disbursements every day po, no? Since the release of the cash. And that disbursements, they would not go less than 10 times a day po. If you could see po in the chart, this is what we've seen. You would notice that the ARs, it would say the address or location. This is one thing particularly with the DepEd. Aside from the name, the signature, and the date, meron pong locations. So, on February 21, 2023, or the very next day after the SDO encashed the 37.5 million in checks, lumabas po sa acknowledgement receipts that SDO Fajardo made 7 disbursements already. This is the day after, in 7 different locations. And the locations are Malolos, Davao, San Francisco, Agusan del Sur, Makati City, Negros Oriental, Negros Occidental, and Davao City. So the very next day, after, I would assume, the check was issued, it was encashed in Land Bank under the Shaw branch. Tama po ba for DepEd? Or
DepEd branch.
The DepEd branch. So the DepEd branch, that is in what city po here in NCR?
Pasig, sir.
In Pasig po na encash. And immediately the next day, he traveled to these 7 places and had these 7 ARs. Did this not raise a red flag of the impossibility of this occurring?
Well, it does, sir. Although during our review, somehow we just accepted the acknowledgement receipt.
For reasons you've already stated earlier po,
Yes,
Attorney
po.
Camara. In addition to this, if you go to the day of the first quarter that had the most disbursements, which is March 15, 2023, SDO Fajardo supposedly made 26 disbursements in the following locations: Davao del Sur, Surigao del Sur, Oriental Mindoro, Laguna, Zamboanga del Sur, Cebu, Ifugao, Antique, Batanes, Pampanga, Legazpi, Lanao del Norte, Batangas, Tarlac, Metro Manila, Samar, Davao de Oro, Agusan del Norte, Davao del Sur, Davao de Oro, Laguna, Cavite, Surigao del Norte. Attorney Camora, let's give him a helicopter. I don't think he'll do that in one day. So it really raises a question. How did SDO Fajardo certify and say that he personally disbursed this? Buti na lang po yung DepEd ARs have location. So it really shows us kung saan po sila. Unlike the DepEd ARs, yung OVP po wala. Yung OVP would only have the name, the purpose, the name, the signature, and the date. That's it. And the amount. Pero here we could see in DepEd, it seems to be really impossibility. So you could see the theme, not really the theme po, no, but what we're driving at here. Earlier, according to Congresswoman Garin, and I understand her frustration, there is the physical impossibility of the delivery and encashment of the cash. The questions regarding that, surrounding where it was brought. And then now, even the physical impossibility of the disbursement. Yun naman po yung tanong dito. If truly SDO certifies that he or she is the only person and has personal knowledge of disbursement, has personal knowledge, has gone through the DEPs, how do we explain this? It looks like from north to south, tip to tip po ng Pilipinas. By Batanes pa rin po. So these are just some of the questions that we have. And if we look at the chart earlier, it happens multiple times. For February 25, there were 21 disbursements across 18 different localities. February 27, 21 disbursements across 18 localities, March 3, and the list goes on. And if you notice the chart, every day po yun. Every day po may disbursement. So it really raises the question po, no?
Yes, Mr.
About
Chair.
the legal, the veracity of the certification. We're now seeing the consequences of our current format that we have, that a simple signature which the COA just blindly, not to fault you, again, we understand the reasons that you have, that you lack manpower and all that, but napakahirap po to because we're talking about the most difficult to account for, confidential intelligence funds po, no? So if I may continue, Attorney Camora, and again, I understand frustration. I wanted to ask this to the SDO personally. I think they would have been able to answer. But on the light side na lang po, to make the most of the information that we have, at least on the side of the COA, that you'd understand the frustration of this committee and that you'd understand po where we'd want to proceed with this. It goes the same with the OVP. If I may continue, Mr. Chair, the pattern of the OVP is that even if it does not have the locality or the address, the disbursements are really dubious and curious because it really makes use of these disbursements in a way that you would find hard to believe. Just the number of disbursements given in the number of days, it really raises some questions po, no? Like for example, on December 23 of December, 23rd of December of 2022, this is close as in relation to what Congressman Acop mentioned. There were a lot of holidays in those 11 days. And in fact, Noche Buena would have been the number one thing that people would be preparing for. But on the eve of Christmas, or the day before, when you would be preparing for the eve of Christmas, on December 23, at least 103 individuals received a total amount of 15 million pesos. I mean, just 15 million pesos for 103 individuals. If truly the SDO is certifying that personally I think this is SDO Acosta, she dispersed this, it really raises the question kung the possibility po, no, of how they did this. So, and this would include a bunch of things. So it's very much payment of reward, payment of information, medicine. The safe houses were also included there. Given the various clusterings, if you would call it that, parang it leads to the, I would not say impossibility, the improbability of the AR submitted. So I think we really need a strict scrutiny po, no, of the DEPs that are being submitted. I'd just like to point out that based on this study, the days where the OVP gave confidential funds, over 100 recipients, all happened in 2022. And this is the time that had the 11-day period. So you could see na, I don't know if it's intentional, pero minadali po talaga. There was really quick disbursement. And in line with that, just one last question, Attorney Camora, and which was brought up by Congressman Acop. He was driving the point with Attorney Sanchez that you could obligate the confidential funds. If you don't consume, for example, because this is cash advance system, you advanced 125 for December of 2022, and you've only consumed, for example, 100 million. Does that mean mawawala na po yung 25 million, or does it carry on to the next quarters? Sorry, let's not do 2022 kasi last month na yun. Let's say for yung GAA provided na CIF. If in the first quarter of 125 million, na consume lang po is or what's justified is 100 million, what is the effect for the second quarter? Can they disburse 150 million, or are they limited still to the quarterly limit of 125?
Mr. Chair, the cash advances for the whole year. So as long as the cash advances are within the year and the last cash advance was liquidated, they could cash advance again for the next like quarter or the next quarter, since most of them do it quarterly.
So for example, on the 31st of March, I've consumed 100 and I justify with the liquidation report of 100 million. I still need to justify the 25 left, even beyond March 31. That would be allowed for the first quarter?
Can you repeat?
Sorry. So yung first quarter po, meron tayong cash advance of
Yes,
125 million. Ang nakonsumo lang po ng opisina ay 100 million lamang. May 25 million po na balance. Does that mean I can still justify the 25 million after March 31?
No, Mr. Chair. If it has been cash advanced for that period and the amount that was unutilized should be returned by the SDO.
It should be returned to the SDO.
Yes,
Yung
Mr.
sinasabi
Chair.
po ni
Since
Congressman
yung liquidation
Acop,
po is yung buong amount po dapat.
But it could be obligated in that time. It doesn't have to be dispersed. You could obligate for the 25 million pa hindi naman return. I believe that was the point that Congressman Ako was making.
Pwede naman po
Pwede.
yata. As long as it is still within the year of the it's still within the year, so yung cash advance is still for the year.
Thank you, Attorney Comoro. So yun lang po, just to manifest, it really drives the point that it seems to be there are questions po with the timing and the accompanying DEPs, and I'm sure that we're still going to go back to this. There were other questions, but unfortunately, wala po yung ating SDO, so I'll have to hold on to that. Mr. Chair, with that, I'd yield to other interpellators. Maraming salamat po.
Just an interjection, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Congressman Franz Castro.
Yes, so excellent, no, yung pinakita nating pag-analyze nung utilization noong confidential funds in 2023 and even in 125 in 2022. The possibility, the improbability physically nung pagbabayad ng SDO nito doon sa mga binanggit natin ano na kung ito man ay reward or whatever or reward. So ano ngayon ang gagawin ng Mr. Chair? Gagawin ng COA doon na obvious na sa pag-analyze natin, even Attorney Camora, nagsasabi siya na parang imposible. Tama ba yon? In one date, in one day, in different places, magagawa ba ng SDO na pumunta para bayaran yung mga sinasabi natin na dapat na bayaran in a day? Sabi nyo kanina at sabi natin kanina, no, imposible. So that is yung sa pagre-review ninyo nung ipinasa ng mga acknowledgement receipt, etc. So Mr. Chair, ang tanong dito, kasi hindi lang tayo matatapos na ito na yung nangyari, parang nakakatawa na talaga eh. Ano yung SDO na yon, Mr. Chair? Lumipad mula sa isang lugar patungo sa isang lugar in eight places, lumipad. Kung siya lang talaga yung nagdi-disburse. So talagang parang pinapatawa tayo, no? Pinapatawa ang taong bayan ng Office of the Vice President na nagagawa ito, no? So ano ngayon ang gagawin ng COA? Are you still going to accept those acknowledgement receipt or those na mga disbursement na tingin natin ay panloloko lang, niloloko na tayo, 'di ba? Niloloko tayo, taong bayan. So, anong gagawin po ng COA, Mr. Chair? Gusto kong malaman, are you going to i-review nyo ba ulit? Ibabalik nyo yan? Or kailangan nyo nang magdesisyon ngayon kung dapat yan na yung pondo na ito ay ibalik yan sa pondo ng taong bayan? So, ano po yung pwedeng moving forward doon sa ipinisend po ni Representative Raj Gutierrez? Mr. Chair, anong gagawin ng COA doon?
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Camora.
Mr. Chair, actually we are thankful to the body for pointing this out to us, since for us naman po as auditors, we presume this as yung regular but since these things have been pointed out, I think we will be basing our reviews na based on what we have discussed here in this hearing. And as to the cases po ng sa OVP and DepEd, yung sa 2023 especially po, AOM pa lang po yung status nung audit actions namin, and under review pa rin po yung mga compliance nila. So we will take po in consideration lahat po ng napag-usapan natin and be more circumspect in our review. Although mahirap since yun nga po marami pong transactions, but moving onwards siguro po i-apply po namin lahat ng mga learnings namin dito sa hearings na to. Although mahirap po talaga.
Kahit na common sense, i-apply nyo dyan. No? Kahit na common sense, Attorney Camora, i-apply nyo dyan.
Yes
No?
po.
Talagang imposible na talagang ito maaring ibinulsa, di ba? O maaring kung saan na napunta. Kaya imposible yung nangyari na sa isang araw pumunta ka sa iba't ibang probinsya para mag-disburse.
Yes, Mr.
No? Imposible
Yes, Mr. Chair.
'yon. At gamitin naman natin yung yung kahit na konsensya or kahit na common sense para diyan po. At gusto natin na dahil ito ay under review, sinasabi niyo hanggang kailan po, Mr. Chair, yung review nito?
Hindi pa po namin masabi, Mr. Chair, since ang mga involved po ay kasama po dito sa hearing madalas. So, we will try po as soon as kung
Okay, so Mr. Chair, no, I hope yung COA would be prudent enough, at saka talagang tignan nyo talaga kung paano ginagamit ng Office of the Vice President at saka ng DepEd before itong confidential funds. Thank
Yes,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Um,
can I,
okay, with the indulgence of Congresswoman Luistro, the Chair would like to recognize Senior Deputy Speaker Don Gonzales.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address my question lang na three item lang kay Attorney Sulaika Lopez. Ma'am, who is your Assistant COS? Who is your Assistant Chief of Staff po, ma'am?
The Assistant Chief of Staff is Mr. Lemuel Ortonio, Your Honor, Mr. Chair.
Sino po ang pumipirma sa travel order ni tawag dito, si Lopez, si Ordoña? Nasa abroad. Ano pangalan nun?
Ako po
Hindi,
yun.
yung si pangalan nito. Sino nasa abroad? Sino pumipirma sa mga travel order ng office?
In the OVP, Your Honor, there is a delegation of authority. There are certain officials that I signed for in their travel authority. There are also other officials that Mr. Ortonio signs for.
No, who signed the travel authority pala of Gina Acosta?
Mr. Lemuel, no? In the travel authority shown to me, Your Honor, it is Mr. Lemuel Ortonio.
Okay. Number 2 question, ma'am. Kung if tama po, hindi po niyo pwedeng i-recall yung travel order ni Gina Acosta to attend the hearing as Chief of Staff, ma'am?
Anong date na kay Jim?
Ikaw ma'am, ang Chief of Staff, di ba?
Yes, that is correct. No, I was also asking Director Lin kung anong dates po siya yung covered ng travel authority. Okay. We will consider, Your Honor. We will consider.
No, you just answer my question, ma'am. If yes, you can recall the travel order of Miss Acosta, ma'am. You are the boss.
I was not the person, Your Honor, who issued the travel authority.
Precisely po. Precisely po.
Yes,
So
but we
meaning
will-
to say, if you cannot answer, they're not really using the travels. Umiiwas lang po sa pag-attend nitong hearing na to. Tama ho ba?
Your Honor, like I mentioned earlier, kakabalik ko lang ho. I will have to study and look into the matter.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Number 1, kung yes, you can recall the travel authority of Ma'am Gina Acosta. And number 2, kung hindi, iniiwasan lang po umattend dito sa ating hearing ng good government. Tama ho ba, Miss?
Your Honor, as to the earlier suggestion on your end to recall the travel authority, I will look into it, Your Honor, and consider. But as I mentioned earlier, kakabalik ko lang ho sa opisina, and the travel authority is not something that I saw and have gone through. Ngayon ko lang po nakita through the phone of Director Sanchez. But we will consider Your Honor's recommendation.
Yes, please. Give me the date lang po kung kailan pinirmahan ng assistant COS nyo yung travel authority ni Gina Acosta.
Just a moment, please. Your Honor, the document indicates that it was signed November 14, 2024. Your Honor. Mr. Chair.
Saan po siya nagpunta, ma'am?
Si Ms. Gina Acosta po.
Opo.
Wait, just a moment. Can- All right, per travel order number 2024-1036, in the interest of public service, with Your Honor, I would like to read the entire travel order in toto. Gina F. Acosta is hereby authorized to travel on official business to continue the monitoring and facilitation of the preparations and rollout of OVP anniversary activities in various areas on November 18 to 22, 24. Then, while outside her official station, she's authorized to collect allowance for daily travel expenses, incur actual travel expenses in accordance with Executive Order number 77/2019, chargeable against OVP funds, subject to existing budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations, including but not limited to the internal financial controls and spending guidelines. The date is November 14, 2024, Your Honor.
Attorney, ano trabaho po ng SDO? Di ba SDO po si Gina Acosta? If meaning SDO, siya ang disbursement officer ng OVP. Bakit siya ang umihikot regarding for the anniversary of the OVP?
Okay.
Meaning to say November 4, 18 to 22.
Okay.
Outside the country uto?
No, Your Honor. It is within the country. It is within the country. As regards to the question, earlier question, what is the work of Ms. Gina Acosta?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, may I know what is, just a moment. What is, okay. Your Honor, Ms. Gina Acosta is a Vice Presidential Officer 6, Staff 6 of the OVP. And as such, apart from being an SDO, she is also responsible for, she has also other tasks and functions, Your Honor.
So she's concurrent. So is staff 6 and then she's an SDO also. Concurrent siya. Office of the Vice President.
I understand the SDO is a as a designation only, Your Honor. She is VPSO, that is her position title.
Okay, thank you. Pero, ma'am, pwedeng ma-recall mo yung travel order niya para mag-attend siya sa next hearing si Ms. Gina Acosta.
Okay, we will consider, Your Honor, the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you also.
Thank you.
Just point of clarification lang.
Yes, DS.
Sorry,
Suarez.
with the indulgence of Congresswoman Luistro. Kailan po ba yung anniversary celebration?
The exact date for the OVP 89th anniversary, Your Honor, is November 15. Last November 15. However, in celebration of that particular anniversary, we have actually just a moment, month-long series of activities, Your Honor, as confirmed by the Director for Operations.
So your anniversary is on the 15th.
November 15th, yes.
That was 5 days ago.
That is correct.
Correct, right?
Yes.
You knew about this hearing. When did we Comsec, when was our last hearing? November 11. So that was 9 days ago. We're November 20 now. So in between that time, it's impossible. It is humanely impossible for the second highest office in the land not to know about the hearing on good government. So, and you've already celebrated. You said the celebration was on the 15th.
That is correct, Your
Yes,
Honor.
and from what I understand, I think on a memo that was released by the Office of the Vice President, the celebrations are supposed to be simple. That is correct, right?
That is true, Your Honor.
So how can you have a simple celebration that would last a month?
Your Honor,
So you're saying you're celebrating the anniversary of an office from November 15 to December 15?
Your Honor, when we say celebration, we simply mean the rollout of projects and activities across the country, Your Honor, in our various satellite offices. Where in most cases, the Vice President will be present also to celebrate with the satellite offices.
Okay, yeah. So I
It is
understand.
simple, actually. It's a simple
Yeah,
program.
I
Your Honor.
understand that, but you know what? It's not a legitimate reason for number one. It is special disbursement officer. An SDO doesn't supervise over events. I would expect the chief of staff to supervise over events. I would expect maybe an executive assistant to supervise over events. But why a special disbursement officer whose primary focus is money, finance, supervising over preparations for events? Is Gina Acosta an event specialist?
Your Honor, the Miss Acosta's task as SDO is a designation on her end. Her position title is really Vice Presidential Staff Officer 6.
Hindi. Edward Fajardo, where is he? Is he also supervising celebrations? Ano ba to? Naging event specialist na ba tayo? Sunshine Fajardo, missing also. Is he also supervising events? Ano ba sila? Sila mag-MC ng event? Silang in charge sa physical preparations? Hindi ba kayang gawin ng mga satellite offices nyo yun? Nandito yung mga satellite offices nyo. Who's in charge of the satellite offices? Yeah. You cannot handle an anniversary preparation? It's yes or no. Can you handle an anniversary preparation? Can you handle the rollout of programs?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
There you go, Attorney Lopez. They can. They do it. Do you do it in a regular basis? Do you do it in a regular basis?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So why supervise?
Again, for the record, Your Honor, I only saw the travel authorities.
Anyway, yeah.
Right
So,
now.
can you just do me a favor, Attorney Lopez, with the indulgence of Congressman Gonzales? Tawagan mo nga. Sigurado naman akong sasagot sa iyo yan. Ikaw ang chief of staff eh.
I will just try to reach out, Your Honor.
I already asked her to do that a few minutes ago, Mr. Chair.
Ha?
I already asked her an hour ago to contact his the vice.
Baka
the
nasa ibang
assistant,
planeta eh. Anyway, so sorry for my statement. Congressman
Respectfully,
Gonzales.
respectfully, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, I can only really reach out if he does not want to get in touch or revert. I cannot force Mr. Ortonio. But I already texted him. Your Honor.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, sabi mo yung anniversary ng OVP's November 15 at sabi mo dun sa authority, letter of authority to travel is for the preparation of the OVP anniversary. So, ang date po ng authority niya is November 18 to 22. Meaning to say, tapos na po yung anniversary bago nyo binigyan ng letter authority to travel. So, kayo po nagsabi dito kanina, ang anniversary nyo is November 15. Pero ang reason is for the preparation of your OVP anniversary. Parang tapos na ho yung anniversary at binigyan nyo siya ng TA ng November 18 to 22.
Opo. Your Honor, for the record, the Office of the Vice President has 1 central office, 10 satellite offices, and 2 extension offices. There are a series also of activities happening in various locations, but it does not all happen in one day. To give time to the Vice President to participate in the activities of the satellite offices. That is why, Your Honor, it was scheduled month-long. That is the reason.
Okay, thank you.
Respectfully.
Chairman.
Mr. Chair, one question only.
Congressman Jill.
Pwede ba malaman namin sa OBP kung sino yung official na in charge doon sa pag-book ng plane tickets also with accommodation? Just to know the whereabouts of these officials, Mr. Chair.
I have no personal knowledge on this matter. Maybe the director for admin.
How about the other officials from the OBP?
Attorney Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we have a travel arranger in the office under the procurement division. But she's only...
Ma'am, wala rin kayong alam. To cut the long story short.
No, Mr. Chair.
Wawa naman yung opisina nyo. Lahat hindi alam kung nasaan yung mga tao ninyo. Nagkaroon na yata kayo ng amnesia lahat. Ano pa nangyari sa opisina ninyo? Lahat walang alam. From the chief of staff down to the department head. Lahat hindi alam.
Mr. Chair, for
Or meron po kayong pinagtatakpan.
Mr. Chair, for flight bookings, Mr. Chair, there is a person assigned to flight bookings, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I think that is procurement under her office, Mr. Chair. Attorney Sanchez, can you not call that person now? I'll give you 5 minutes po.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
The chair would like to recognize Congressman Ino D.
may we also ask what exactly is the event that's currently happening today? Meron ba po tayong, I don't know if I missed it earlier, ma'am, that they have to attend to? Ano po ba yung event or program na ginagawa ngayong araw na ito na ina-attendan ng mga staff po ninyo?
Okay. Your Honor, for this question, may I refer you to our Director for Operations?
Okay.
No? Director Baloro, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you're Mr. Norman Baloro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The programs for the month of November.
No, for today.
Yes,
for
this
today.
is for the OVP Thanksgiving ceremony, Your Honor.
May idea po kayo details of the event or the program?
For the event, Your Honor, it's somewhere in Caraga, Your Honor.
Somewhere in
Caraga.
Caraga? Wala po kayong exact venue or details of...
No, Your Honor, because we have also our satellite lead who is also assigned in Caraga, Your Honor.
Can we ask the head of the satellite offices? So, can you coordinate with them? Ano po ba yung exact program natin ngayong araw?
Si Miss Regina
Of course,
Tecton.
we just have to ask.
Sino po yung head
Kasi
ng
nga po, we're all
satellite?
confused. Saan po yung mga taong ito? Ano po yung mga programa? Ngayon,
Maayong hapon kaninyong tanan. Mr. Chair, for today, the activity is in Caraga, I think in Hingoog, but the exact details will be under the satellite lead in Caraga.
do we have any coordination po with the satellite team in Caraga office, ma'am?
I will refer you to the Director of Operations because we are all under the operations.
If this has
Ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, we cannot have a referral office. Lahat na lang ng tanong i-refer dito, i-refer dyan, i-refer dito. Wala ba kayong...
Pero ako po naso-surprise kasi yung director ng operation nandirito. Yung Special Project Division nandirito. Pero yung SDO, yun ang umiikot.
Mr. Chair,
Hindi ba dapat yung operation ang umiikot, hindi yung SDO?
Mr. Chair, may I
Yes,
interject?
Congressman
Just a very
Zia.
brief lang po. I think there seems to be a disconnect. Parang it's not only me, hindi nagko-coordinate but disconnect. I think kayo po yung head ng operations, Mr. Baloro, di ba?
Mr. Chair.
I think, Mr. Chair, you should know because you're the central office eh. Diba? Mga satellite offices, are you telling us that the satellite office work independently from yours or that they don't at least send to you? I presume that's a very important occasion or activity. So, I mean, a simple question asked by Congressman Ino D, You cannot even tell us the exact location. What program is this? I mean, you're supposed to know everything because these are satellite offices. You're telling us that you don't care at all to even know the details. Kayo po yung sa central office. These are satellite offices. I mean, there seems to be a disconnect kasi nagtuturuan po kayo eh.
Isa lang po ang maliwanag dito eh. From Chief of Staff down to the Director, puro walang alam. Di parang may nagtatakipan po dito.
Mr. Chair, dagdag ko lang. So, kanina, Mr. Baloro, hindi mo alam kung saan eksakto sa Caraga ginaganap yung anniversary ninyo?
Mr. Chair, with regard to the places, because we have several locations po for Caraga. So we have also our satellite leads who is now in charge with the identification of the location for the OVP anniversary in Caraga.
Okay, several, marami. Ano yung mga lugar na yun?
With regard to you, that with honor, may I also have a time for me to call with our satellite lead?
Alam mo, nagloloko na tayo dito eh. Sa totoo lang, kung meron man nagtataka kung bakit nabawasan yung budget ng OVP, ito naging dahilan eh.
Your
Kasi
Honor.
hindi nyo may paliwanag. Simpleng activity ninyo. You can't even say for a certain fact kung nasaan. Sasabihin nyo maraming activities somewhere in Caraga, tapos hindi nyo man lang masabi kung saan. Anong klaseng celebration yun? Sobrang laki ba ng opisina ninyo na kaya nyong sabay-sabayin lahat ng barangay, lahat ng bayan sa Caraga region? Not unless, of course, you're making a mockery of this committee. Mr. Baloro.
Your Honor.
Hold on. Are you making mockery of this committee, Mr. Baloro?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so if no, then treat us with respect. Where are you celebrating the activities of your celebration today? You are head.
Caraga, Your Honor.
Where there? Do you know how big the Caraga region is?
For my personal knowledge, Your Honor, no.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Your Honor.
Yes, Attorney Lopez.
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, respectfully, may I be given a minute, please, to just discuss and confer with Director Baloro, if that's all right.
Pwede niyo po bang tawagan ngayon si Miss Gina Acosta, speaker po ninyo?
Si Miss Gina Acosta.
Miss Gina Acosta. Paki-speaker po nga po ninyo.
Mr. Chair.
Para sa iba pang karagdagang mga balita at impormasyon, ay huwag po nating kalimutang mag-like, share at comment sa video na ito, at huwag po rin nating kalimutang mag-subscribe to continue supporting us. Maraming salamat po sa inyong panonood, at naway tangkilikin po ninyo ang aming YouTube channel.